everyone. It's Wendy Barlow from Cohen, Tucker, and Adis, coming today to talk to you about alternatives to H-1B. As many people are aware, the H-1B selection process wrapped up at the end of March, with USCIS making selections for both the master's and regular CAP. Some people are very happy with the results. A lot are very disappointed. If you're happy with the results, congratulations. Please make sure you're working closely with your employer and or their immigration attorney to make sure you are properly and timely filing the petition. The 90-day window to file began on April 1st, so it's very important to get those petitions in as soon as possible. For those of you who are disappointed, we feel your pain. There is obviously a much greater demand for H-1B visas than the actual number of visas. And I truly believe this is something Congress needs to look into. But until such time, unfortunately, we're only able to discuss alternatives. So what can you do if your H-1B registration was not selected? You can explore options with, if you're on F1 with OPT and CPT. For example, if you have a STEM degree and you may be eligible for a STEM extension of your OPT, you should take advantage of that. If that's not something that's available, you may want to consider going back to school, maybe pursuing an advanced degree such as a master's or a PhD. This will not only allow you to get additional OPT time, it may qualify you for CPT, or even if it doesn't, at the end of the day, it can also help you when it comes time for H-1B, because you can be potentially put in the lottery for master's degrees and higher, which ultimately can increase your chances of being selected in the lottery process. Now, I know F1 is not an option available to many people just because the expense of attending school as a foreign student. So let's talk about some other options. So there's H-1B1. It's just like the regular H-1B, only it's limited to citizens of Chile and Singapore. There's not necessarily a lot of applicants out there, but it is something to know about and know that it does exist. The other options are E3. E3 works a lot like H-1B. The requirements are very similar. However, it's a visa only available to Australians. So if you happen to be an Australian national, or you can obtain Australian citizenship soon, you may want to look into that. It's a great visa. Again, you still have to meet the general requirements similar to an H-1B, but it is an easy visa to obtain. And while it does have numerical limits, much like H-1B and H-1B1, to date, those limits have not been met. So it's not something we're worried about oversubscription to. Another option is a TN visa. This is only available to Mexican and US and Canadian citizens, not residents. You have to be a citizen. Again, this is for professional occupations. These occupations are specifically listed as part of the treaty between Canada, US, and Mexico. So it doesn't cover everyone. But again, there's a lot of similarities between the H-1B and this. You have to show that you have a bachelor's degree or higher for most of the fields, and you have to be coming to work in one of these specific fields. It does cover a lot of professions, but not all. Treaty traders and investors, E1 and E2, also great options. Limitation tends to be your country of citizenship and your employer's citizenship. If you work for a large publicly traded company, it's going to be based on essentially where the country is traded. So, for example, if you work for a company that is on the French stock exchange, they will be considered a French company. If you work for a company that is multinational, but you're working for the US division, it's not going to help. The other qualifier is you have to be the same citizenship of the country. Let's say you work for a smaller firm. It has two owners, majority owned, both of them are from Italy, or France, wherever you may be. There's a lot of countries that qualify for E2 and E1. You can they can petition for you to be either a manager or an executive, or a someone who has like specialized knowledge, essentially someone that is a skilled worker. So one of the things, technically the term is essential worker for this category, but there's a lot of similarities between that and specialized knowledge for L1. E1 is for companies that engage in international trade, so you're going to have to show there's trade between the US and the other country. E2s are for investors. That's where a company comes in, sets up a firm here, and they're investing in the US economy. It doesn't mean they are an investment firm. It just means that the company has set up shop here and is investing money to run an operation. It's a great option because it's not subject to limits. So it is something to look into. But again, there are limitations because both you and the company have to share the same citizenship. There is a entrepreneurial parole. Oh, one thing before I skip from E2 and E1, this could also be something that you set up your own international business. Again, it's not something that you could set up that just barely supports yourself. It has to be more of an investment in that, but it is an option for you. Now, entrepreneurial parole. USCIS has a parole program that will let people come into the US for up to 2.5 years. You would be authorized to work in order to own or part own a company in the US. It's a great option, but it again is limited. It is parole versus a visa. So you got to be careful. Make sure you look into that further. O1. O1 visa is for people with ability, extraordinary ability or achievement. O1A is for individuals who have extraordinary ability in the science, business, education, or athletics. You have to show sustained national or international acclaim, have an offer of employment from a U.S. employer in the capacity that you have the extraordinary ability in. And there's a lot of other requirements that you must meet. But if you can show you have extraordinary ability, it is also another great option. It's not necessarily for someone who is a recent graduate. It's usually available to people further along in their profession. But again, it's a case-by-case basis. I've dealt with people who were just graduating from film school, but had actually had some pretty amazing credits to themselves already. And I've also had professionals who've been working in their area of business for many, many years. So it really is a case-by-case situation. I never tell anyone outright they're eligible for O. O1B is for the extraordinary ability in the arts or achievements in motion picture and television industry. Again, you have to meet a lot of requirements, but if you can, it is a great visa because it doesn't have any caps. And there's also the good news for employers: no wages set by the Department of Labor. Another option, H3. This is a trainee visa. This can be done by any employer for any particular person. Now, there are strings attached to this. Again, it literally is a trainee visa. So if you're someone who has been working in the field for a substantial number of years, have advanced degrees, specialized knowledge, it's probably not going to work for you. If you're someone who is more recently graduated, it may be a better option. Now, it's not that the employer just says we're hiring you as a trainee and that's it. There actually has to be a training plan developed, and you have to show that you're going to be receiving job-related training for work that will ultimately be done outside the US. And essentially that this training does not exist in the country where you would be doing this work. Again, whether it's a viable option really depends on what kind of industry you're working in. There's also the J1 exchange visitor for training. Recent graduates of foreign universities and colleges may qualify under this. You may also qualify under it if you've graduated here. It is a temporary visa. It is for training. So again, it's going to be limited to people who are really just starting their professional careers. You can also look, if your employer is a multinational company, have yourself transferred to an office overseas. Yes, ideally you may want to be in the US, but if you work in a branch, say in London for a year, or Dhaka, or you name it, anywhere in the world for a year, and you're either working as a manager, executive, or someone with specialized knowledge, after that year, the company can request an L1 visa for you. L1A if you're a manager or executive, L1B if you're specialized knowledge, and that will allow you to come back into the US. Again, the requirements are different because it is a different type of visa, but there are a lot of similarities between it and H-1B, meaning, you're not required to have a degree, but a lot of these positions do, or they require lots of years of experience. You can even be coming to set up a new office in the US, a branch or a subsidiary. So it's a great option, but you have to first work at least a year overseas. then the company can sponsor you to come back to the US. And there's no caps. So again, you're not rushing through this lottery, and it can happen anytime within that year. So if you hit 1 year on October 1st, but the H-1Bs are already taken, no worries. You can start. Another option is green card. There's a misconception that an employer must have you working for them on a non-immigrant visa first. A lot of employers do. They want to see how it works out, but there's actually no requirement. An employer could start the green card process for you at any time. One issue that may arise is the fact that they start the process does not give you any right to remain in the US and work. So you will potentially have to depart the US, remain overseas for a period of time before your immigrant visa is approved and you can come back and work. But nonetheless, it is an option. We're happy to discuss these options with you individually so we can make individualized assessments for you. But today we just wanted to give you an overview and say all is not lost. You know, a lot of people get very upset about the H-1B lottery and the results, but there are other options out there. The best thing I can tell you is whether it's with us or another law firm, please have an individualized assessment. If you're looking for a little bit more information about the specific requirements for any of the visas I talked about today, you can visit our website, cohentuckerlaw.com. We have a breakdown of the visas and requirements. And like I said, if you want to talk about it more and whether you're eligible for anything, please call us 212-840-0050 to set up a consultation. Any of our attorneys would be happy to review your situation and see what alternatives may be available. I hope this information was helpful. Have a great day.